Kaz and Niku go undercover and run into a couple of First Order bosses.
How you get so big that you food of this kind?
Hello and welcome into this week's spoiler review of Star Wars Resistance. We're talking about the episode Station to Station, so you've been properly warned if you're trying to dodge spoilers. So here we are back in the plotline that the internet has been clamoring for. We get to see Tam again, we get to see the First Order again, we get to see more of the issues that the Colossus is up to, we get back to some of the spying routes of the show. This was a really solid episode, and it was showing a lot of the machinations that are going to be set up through the rest of the series. Where we find ourselves now is, I believe we are basically the halfway point, really more heading towards the less than halfway to go in this season, which means in this series. As it looks right now, if you check out the release schedule for the episodes going forward, it does not look like we are going to get a mid-season break, and it's unknown whether or not we're going to get a mid-season trailer, because there's still quite a bit from the first trailer that we got that has not appeared in this show. So that's going to kind of change how I've predicted some of this stuff is going to go. Because honestly, I thought the show would be on break by now. It's also pretty intense because this is the last episode we get before the Rise of Skywalker, which, if you're watching this on release week, comes out in just a couple of days. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens to the show after the Rise of Skywalker, to see if they've been holding anything in reserve, and if it's going to connect with the movie or not in any particular way. I think they could either do some foreshadowing in the next couple of episodes for what we will then see in the movie. It's also possible that it won't really connect at all, because just where the timeline is, this is still several months out from where Rise of Skywalker picks up. We are definitely post TLJ. I don't necessarily know how far past TLJ we are, but we're definitely, beyond that film, but I don't think we're encroaching on where Rise of Skywalker is going to pick up yet. But onto the episode itself, I'm always impressed with the show, not just from a writing standpoint, as in like characters or dialogue or stuff like that, but in the overall structure and how some of these episodes come about. Some of these episodes do stuff that's really, really creative that I super appreciate. If you remember from the Rendezvous Point review, I talked about how much I like stories that are in media res, things that start in the middle of things that kind of just put you in the action and don't necessarily spend time telling you how they got into the action. And I love that this episode starts not just within the First Order, but with Tam and Jace, and they get this assignment that they don't necessarily want, just a supply run. And it's interesting because you see Jace, he's kind of starting to chafe under the First Order, not because he has any kind of qualms with it, but because he's sick of menial work. When we saw him on the Colossus before, he was always doing a scam, he always had something up his sleeve, he was trying to steal Yeager's fuel to win the race, he was a waiter, but he wasn't really happy as that. He seemed like the type of guy that didn't want to just work in a garage like everybody else. Here we can kind of see that that was probably a big part of his problem. It wasn't just maybe lack of opportunity, but maybe not necessarily wanting to try as hard, because here he's not even liking maintenance on his own ship. That said, I think it's interesting that we haven't seen him and Tam out flying as much, but that's a point I'm going to make later on in the review. But here we have Jace just being really over the First Order. Tam's actually fitting in just fine. For all of her other qualms with the First Order, she doesn't have a problem taking care of the ship, doing any of this stuff. She misses the fun of Yeager's garage, but she doesn't have any problem doing maintenance. Then they get assigned to the supply run, and they get sent to the ship known as the Titan. And now, finally, I feel like there's been a couple of different reviews where I've said, now we know why the First Order wanted the Colossus, but now I think we know for sure why the First Order wanted the Colossus. Because they're collecting all kinds of stations like the Colossus. Tam and Jace get sent to the Titan, which is very thematically named along with the Colossus. It's the same kind of station, and as we see throughout the episode, it even has the same layout. Our characters who are there at the station can find their way around, even though they've never been there before, because everything's in approximately the same place. It's kind of like a dark and twisted funhouse mirror. It was really fun to experience this revelation with Tam and Jace. It could have been something that Kaz and Niku might have experienced. We didn't get to see that, but it's cool to see it from their end of things, especially because they're kind of just playing catch up in the First Order, right? They're trying to fit in. When something is common knowledge in the First Order, they have to be like, oh, yeah, I totally knew that. And to kind of let them have that experience was really cool. It was also just cool seeing them flying in a TIE fighter like we would see Poe and Finn doing in The Force Awakens. Yeah, so that's what the big deal is about the Colossus, is that the First Order wants to get these ships back. My kind of gut instinct, that I'm not really basing on anything other than it would kind of be logical, is maybe these used to be Imperial ships, and in fact this could have been Doza's ship when he was with the Empire. Maybe he kept the ship at the fall of the Empire, didn't bother to change its name, which is why it thematically matches the Titan, and that could be why the First Order wanted it so much. It's going around to collect resources that were Imperial at one time. But none of this is still the point about the writing that I was really excited about, so let me go ahead and finally make that. I love that when Tam and Jace are walking around on the Titan, they bump into somebody, and it happens to be Kaz. It would be very typical to have Kaz and Niku go on this mission, start with them on the Colossus, you know, stay with them in their perspective, and then bump into Tam and have this very typical, but it would have been very good nonetheless, point of, oh, there's Tam, but now we get to experience this from the other side. I've been saying for a while now, the fact that we haven't had that many episodes with Tam really makes her presence that much more important and valuable when we do get her. So we're already excited to be with her and to stay at her perspective. But then to have her perspective when she bumps into Kaz, and to kind of have her like, was that Kaz? Was that not Kaz? And experience that as we're trying to figure out if that was Kaz, or is Tam just seeing Kaz in places because she's missing him? She feels like she's on the Colossus. It was just a really good moment. We kind of bump into Kaz in this First Order uniform on this First Order ship that's the version of the ship she grew on. Like, it had to be a little bit disconcerting, and I like that we got to experience that with her. And then once this happens, we do get to finally see Kaz and Niku's perspective. They are dressed as technicians, and this is not a particularly in-depth observation on my part. This has kind of been all over the internet since the trailer, but you can see Kaz and Niku are in these technician outfits that appear to look just like Matt the Radar Technician from the famous SNL sketch, and it's kind of making that outfit canonized, which is really cool. So that's just a fun little Easter egg, especially because Bobby Monahan, who voices Orca, is from Saturday Night Live. So it's just kind of a nice little small world sort of moment. It's at this point that we learn that the Colossus is in a lot of trouble. They don't have a device that's going to block out the stuff that's good. It was a lot of techno babble, but basically if they don't get this part, then everybody on the Colossus is going to die, and die in a particularly gruesome way, because radiation is not a fun way to go. So there's a lot at stake here. We've been seeing the Colossus, you know, run out of food, we've seen them run out of fuel, we've seen them run out of money, and now the Colossus itself is literally just breaking down. The logical thing then is to realize that there are ships like this in the First Order, and to go take a part from them. One kind of odd thing to keep in mind is that Niku is the only kind of First Order alien anywhere. We've seen aliens that work for the First Order. We saw that in the Engineer episode earlier in this season, but we've never really seen them as a part of the crew, as near as I can think. They're usually hired in people. I know we had a discussion about this in the comment section, but like, when you look around the station, when you look around the Titan, the only alien on that station is Niku. And I think on the one hand, it's a little bit odd that no one is like, why is this alien here? Although the fact that he is an alien does attract some attention to himself, or does set them apart from other technicians. But I think it's also pretty telling that no one seems to care, because it's just a lowly technician's job, right? This is not some sort of big management position or something, so it probably still reflects how they see aliens, because they don't mind seeing aliens doing this kind of menial work, especially if Nikto are better known as a technical species or something like that. Here, Kaz finds out that Tam and Jace are not the only First Order people that have come to the Titan. Hux is there as well, General Hux. It was good to see somebody from the movies kind of make it into the show. It adds that weight of something important is happening, and it's just interesting to see what Hux is up to. Like I said, I'm pretty sure we're post The Last Jedi. Hux conveniently doesn't mention the name of the Supreme Leader. You know, there's that dynamic between Hux and Kylo, where Hux very begrudgingly follows Kylo as a Supreme Leader, so kind of seeing him out acting as this face of the First Order, it makes you interested in what's going on in the bigger galaxy outside of just this story. But Hux is being Hux. Hux is cranky, Hux is doing his Hux thing, he's yelling about stuff, and he ends up requiring Kaz's help to find his way to a briefing room. Kaz's butt here is saved by the fact that the Titan is laid out the same as the Colossus, but there's this really intense scene in the elevator that was really well done, because Kaz probably knew who General Hux was even before the Hosnian Cataclysm, but Kaz would absolutely recognize him from that message regardless. He is standing in an elevator with the man who had the speech and gave the order to destroy his homeworld. Now he knows his family is okay, but his homeworld is destroyed and all these people are dead, and here is Kaz with the man responsible. And so you can kind of hear Hux just complaining about things and being very Hux-like, and Kaz is just kind of sitting there having to take it, having to take it, having to take it. And it's almost like he can't take it anymore, and then he turns around, but that becomes very important because then Pyre shows up, because everybody is on the station, and if Pyre had seen Kaz's face, it all would have been over right then. So that was a very kind of lucky move, and then Kaz is able to kind of keep his identity hidden as the higher-ups go to their meeting. The sequences that followed were just exceptionally well executed. Basically, you have the classic Kaz and Niku have to go to the one place to unlock the other place so that they can go to the thing, so they can unlock the thing, so they can get away. They have to go on a bit of a scavenger hunt. It's like kind of a bad side quest in a video game. It creates this tension because they have to move around, they have to hide. Yes, they're in First Order uniforms, but no, they wouldn't necessarily be going to the places they're going or doing what they're doing. You see them hiding behind stuff. There is this aloofness, obliviousness of First Order staff to not really seem to care. It's really only the stormtroopers that are suspect at all. Although a lot of the First Order peeps seem to have helmets, and maybe that helps with the sneaking because they just don't have the peripheral vision. But really, it's just nice to see Kaz doing a great job in this episode. He is on the ball. He is the one that is doing the great cover story to cover for Niku. Like, he's really learning how to overdo it just enough to make people want to not deal with you, but not overdo it to the point where people get suspicious. So that's done really well. There's a point where Kaz has to stun 2 stormtroopers, and he actually makes the shots. So this was really an episode showing all that Kaz has learned and showing how Kaz can really make it count when everything is riding on him. But again, it probably helps that everybody in the First Order has this aloofness of, if somebody's beneath me, I'm not really going to pay attention to them. The other kind of convenient thing that happens here is Tam and Jace split up. Tam thinks she hears about where Kaz and Niku are, and she goes to investigate, which separates her so that when Jace finds Kaz and Niku and turns them in, she doesn't have to make a decision right there. And later when she helps Kaz and Niku escape, she doesn't have to make that decision in front of anyone else. She's at a public terminal where anything could happen. Nothing is necessarily going to get pinned down on her. And of course, she's really deciding to help because everyone on the Colossus is in danger. Not just the group of friends that she may still be mad at, the people she feels hurt by, but everyone. And she knows that there's a lot of people on that station that don't deserve to die by radiation, and she wants to help them out, and she knows the First Order never will. So again, it was a very clever piece of writing to keep everybody separated, because what I've been saying for a long time, too, is the problem with drawing out Tam's story with the First Order is you don't want to put her in the position where she's actually being the bad person. You always want Tam making decisions that you can stand by and agree with, and because she's away from Jace, she doesn't have to make her decision right then, so we don't have to worry about her being in danger. But she's also able to actually help, but not in a way where I feel like she's completely turned her back on the First Order. She just knows that there are some things that are right, even if she can't deal with them right now. The whole plan is really executed quite well. The only hiccups are the fact that Pyre is there, and if he bumped into Kaz or Niku, he would recognize them. Hux kind of throws things into the works, but even then, Kaz was getting around that just fine. Really, the problem is that Tam and Jace happen to be there because Jace would, of course, recognize them. Eventually, Kaz and Niku are able to escape with the help of Tam, and then we have a series of running and jumping, and everything that happened in the hangar felt like a level out of The Force Unleashed. Riding the cranes and having to jump onto the crates that are falling down. CB-23 gets her own kind of fight scene. She's got some grease and grime on her to kind of look like she might fit in with the darker colored rollies that are at the First Order station, and they're able to get through. So this was very much everything's kind of going wrong, all of the dominoes are falling, but I never felt like our heroes were out of control, and it was really great to see that. I kind of wonder if it's all entirely them growing, or maybe because we're seeing more from the perspective of the First Order, we see a little bit less of how the plan was supposed to go, because we don't actually know how the plan was supposed to go. So I'm watching this and I'm like, this seems perfectly fine, but I don't really know how easy it was supposed to be for them to get in and get out. But it was just good. It was good to see now as we get towards the end of the season, our characters growing and learning their lessons. Two kind of first order notes before I go. As I was saying, they very intentionally don't mention who is the supreme leader right now. That kind of leads me to wonder, are they just doing that to mess with us? Are they just doing that to kind of hold back on some sort of plot twist to the more casual viewer who might not be following timelines closely? Or maybe just people within the First Order might not really know that much about the name of the Supreme Leader, they just know the Supreme Leader, right? How much was Snoke really the focal point of the First Order? After all, the speech at Starkiller Base before they destroyed the Republic was not Snoke, it was Hux. Hux has kind of been the face of everything First Order that we've seen up until this point. Snoke has always been the shadowy figure. Is Kylo just kind of taking over that shadowy figure role now that he's the Supreme Leader, content to let Hux be the mouthpiece? I mean, even you go back to The Last Jedi, and you have the scene post-throne room fight where Kylo has woken up, and Hux is there. Kylo chokes out Hux to declare himself Supreme Leader. Why was Hux like, I'm not gonna follow you? You know, why didn't he automatically assume Kylo was heir to the First Order? Why was he kind of acting like he should be in charge? Well, he's been doing all of the work, and he's been the face of the First Order. And I think that's part of the conflict between Hux and Kylo. And so it's just cool to see Hux going around and doing all of this, and it really makes me wonder, how much does the average person in the galaxy even know or care about the identity of the Supreme Leader? And then my last note is really just more of a prediction. At the end of the episode, Pyre calls Tierney and is like, hey, this happened, the Colossus must be getting desperate, and Tierney is instantly curious what's up with Tam and what was her involvement in all of this, and finds it curious that it was mainly Jace that was doing everything. I think what's going to happen, because Tierney probably has access to those camera recordings, the security footage that we learned about in Rendezvous Point of Tam with Tora's mom, and it's very possible that Tierney is sitting on all this. I don't think Tierney's dumb enough to think that everything is on the up and up with Tam. I think she knows that things are going on with Tam and is kind of suspect and is kind of happy to let things ride out. I think that we're going to hit a point where Tierney is going to use Tam, which she says point blank in this episode, but I think it's going to be something where I think she's going to set Tam up to have another opportunity to help the Colossus and help her friends, and in helping them, actually hurt them, like do some sort of trap, and so Tam thinks she's doing the right thing, and then her friends get in trouble because of it, and then her friends think that Tam set them up, and I think that's going to be Tierney's final separation play between Tam and her friends, is that Tam will make that decision to help her friends and really kind of isolate herself from the First Order, but that will come back to bite her because of something Tierney did and get her friends into trouble, and that will make Tam and her absolutely most separated. It could also be something like I mentioned before, that we haven't seen Jace and Tam in TIE Fighters, even though there have been episodes with TIE Fighters chasing down Resistance and or Colossus people, and there's supposed to be these TIE pilots, but that's a point where Tam's really going to have to make a choice. If she and Kaz are flying against each other, I think it would be kind of a waste if we never see Tam and Kaz fly one-on-one, just because, you know, we know Tam is supposed to be a pilot, and we know Kaz is a great pilot, but I don't know if they'll go there. But again, not to keep bringing up Last Jedi, but it could be that moment, like if you remember in Last Jedi, Kylo is about to fire in the bridge where he knows Leia is, and he hesitates, doesn't do it, and then the bridge gets blown up anyway by other TIE pilots. I think it could be something like that, where Tam is at a moment where she could shoot down Kaz, she doesn't shoot down Kaz, but Kaz kind of gets shot down anyway, or somebody gets shot down anyway. People could think Tam did it, Tam didn't do it, you know, how far is Kaz going to believe in her? Is he going to be the only one that believes in her? I think we could be seeing some kind of moment like that in the future. Not that any of my predictions have really been correct so far, but I think that's definitely something. I think that's going to be Tierney's play. I think Tierney is going to twist Tam's good heart and use her to take down her friends as a personal knife-twisting punishment to Tam for not having full commitment to the First Order. But those are my thoughts. Like I said, this is our last episode of Resistance before the rise of Skywalker, so on the other side, we'll kind of know where things go. We'll know if any of our friends showed up in the movie, that sort of thing. So I'm really excited to experience that with you guys. Let me know what you thought about the episode in the credits. If you're not already, follow us on all the socials. We've been pretty radio silent there because of The Rise of Skywalker, but once the movie's out, we'll be back and you'll be able to chat with us there again. And until next time, keep it real and fly casual.
Cooking can be fun.